Duck Talk with Dr. Jennie, and welcome back to our guest Cherie Benjoseph for the second part of our conversation about sexual abuse prevention. Cherie has been in the field of social work since 1989 after graduating from Boston University with her MSW. She has been serving as a licensed clinical social worker for over 30 years in various school settings. Cherie approaches her work as an expert in child sexual abuse prevention from a proactive perspective. This passion for empowering children to be safe and to develop into healthy, productive adult members of the community led Cherie to co-found Kids Safe Foundation in 2009. Presently, as Chief Program Officer and National Outreach, she works with national and local leaders to improve defining the ever-changing issues around protecting children on how to help them, their parents and guardians, and all child-serving professionals. She has been speaking nationally at conferences and symposiums for over a decade and loves to have conversations about talking to kids about personal safety and believes a safe society free from child sexual abuse and exploitation is attainable. For more information, visit kidssafefoundation.org. Welcome, Cherie.
Welcome to Kids Doc Talk with Dr. Jennie. Dr. Jennie is a board-certified pediatrician and is the Director of Telemedicine at Pediatric Associates.
Hi, Cherie. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Wonderful to be here. So excited.
So I was saying last time when we ended, I had never made an executive decision mid-podcast, mid-recording to say, okay, we need to do part 2. But that's how strongly I felt that, you and I really needed to continue this important and critical conversation. So I'd like to pick up right where we left off. And we were talking about, when we ended the last episode, about appropriate naming of anatomic body parts as being a really powerful tool to empower kids and sort of help decrease that risk of abuse. You also mentioned having a dedicated time with each child that the parents have maybe at the end of the day to provide that safe space to discuss anything that's bothering them. So let's sort of continue that thought. And what else? Like, what are some other tools that parents can use to empower kids and to minimize risk of abuse?
So there are so many. So I'm just going to pick a couple to get us to stay focused. But I also want to add that it's not only what we teach our children, but it's also what we teach ourselves. And the more empowered we are about the topic, about our comfort level with it, about talking to other adults in our lives about personal safety of our children and what that means and what you're teaching your own kids, the safer your children will be. So it's not really just putting the onus on the children, because they are no match for a savvy offender. It's really us making safer and smarter choices while also opening up a dialogue with our children. So I'll start with saying that one of the things we can actually teach children is about good secrets and bad secrets. Okay, the concept of. And some people say, oh, we should never have secrets with our children, or we should just take the word out of the family. And that's well and good, and I understand it, but it's never going to happen in our society. Secrets are secrets, and they're happening all over. Grandma gives a child an extra chocolate bar and says, don't tell mommy, So it's going to be there. But there is a very big difference that we can teach the children in a really easy, non-threatening way between a good secret and a bad secret. So very simply put, a good secret, both people who are keeping the secret feel really good about it. It's comfortable, it's relaxing, it's exciting perhaps, and it has a very specific ending to it. So a parent takes a child to the store and says, you get to pick out a present for your brother. They get to pick it out, they wrap it, and the parent says, now don't tell your brother what you bought him for his birthday. We're going to put it in the closet for a week, and next week you get to tell him. And everybody just feels good about that, and there's a very specific ending. And if the secret is given up early because he couldn't control himself and got excited, no harm, no foul. That's the feeling of a good secret. And it's something that we want kids to viscerally have an experience with so that they know what it feels like to be carrying a good secret. A bad secret is almost everything else. So a bad secret gives a child a feeling of either worry or fear or afraid to tell or confused, yucky, weird, all these different things. But a bad secret could be so many different things. It doesn't have to be about sexual abuse. It can be because a child doesn't have enough food at home and they're holding that in, knowing that they're sitting at lunch and they don't have enough food to eat. Okay. A bad secret could be something that a child saw on the internet that scared them, that they're not telling anybody because they don't they don't potentially want to get in trouble, because they think that if they say, I ended up even by accident on a certain website, they might get in trouble, their technology would be taken away.
I would think bullying is another big one. I could see that happening, right? If they're being bullied at school and they're being told
Absolutely.
to not discuss it with anyone, makes them feel
Absolutely. They could be being bullied in school. They could be cyberbullied online. They could be having a relationship, a friendship online with someone that's turning into a different type of relationship. And they know they already are sucked in and there's something's wrong, but they're now afraid to tell because mostly fear that they're going to get in trouble, because that's how kids think. And we're not going to change that. But what we can do is we can teach them that when they have that feeling of overwhelm, confusion, that's exactly the type of secret they need to come to their people in their circle of safe adults and tell them what is going on without fear of getting in trouble. Sure, there can be consequences at some point for their behavior, depending on what happened or what it is. But the reality is, first priority, we want them safe. So if they're already in a relationship with someone online, either being cyberbullied or actually making a friendship with someone, I put that in air quotes for those of you who can't see us, we need to know that up front so that we can protect them.
I
So we
think that's
teach them.
that's an important distinction to make. And I'm just thinking of different opportunities that as a parent you can empower your kids to understand the difference between good and bad secrets, right? So when there is a opportunity for a good secret, like right, some kind of like present or gift or surprise party, right? Or something that has that criteria of being good and makes you feel happy and safe and excited and has a specific end date. I wonder if that's a really good opportunity to point that out and say, look, we're doing this, right? And this is a special circumstance. And right, we got this like special gift for your brother. And this is a good example of a good secret, right? And anytime somebody else asks you to keep a secret and you don't feel so good about it, that's something you can come to with.
And no one should ever be asking a child to keep a secret from their grown-ups. You know, you get a gift and someone says, this is our special gift between you and me. Don't tell anybody. That's a very common lore, very common part of the grooming process. And so directly say to your kids, if someone's asking you to keep a secret from me, that's what I call a red flag. That's not okay. And it's okay for you to tell me anything and you won't be in trouble. We need to take that onus off so we have a better chance of them actually coming forward to us. And the concept of bad secret, you know how as adults we say that we have a lot of baggage and we have all this childhood baggage that we drag around with us, and that is causing us stress, which actually can make us ill, right? We end up in the doctor's office. So what is childhood baggage? It's our secrets that we didn't talk about and unload and have a grown-up, a trusted grown-up, help us digest. Give you an example. My son, when he was in middle school, had a project for school. The boys are around a computer. Now this goes back years. They're Googling something, and all of a sudden they ended up seeing pictures of terrorism, blown up buildings, buses, blah, blah, blah. And I could hear all of a sudden the room, the day we're in the dining room, I could hear all of a sudden them going, and I come in, and that was an opportunity. They could have kept that secret from me because they felt bad about even having seen what they saw and didn't know what to do with this information. And then we talked about it and we said, never keep, we used it as an example, never keep this type of stuff inside. You're going to see stuff on the internet, and this is table talk. This is dining room table talk, dinner time. If you see something online, come tell me about it. Don't hold it inside. Okay. I am here to listen to whatever you have to say. And if I don't have the answers, I'll tell you, I'm not really sure about that yet. Let me think about it overnight. So good secrets and bad secrets.
I like that. Since you mentioned baggage, I want to touch on a subject that I don't know that we talked too much about last time, of the kind of consequences and lasting physical and emotional effects of abuse in childhood.
Yeah. Do you mean of any type of abuse, the lasting physical effects
I
of?
guess sexual abuse, right? So like when we think about sexual abuse, and I feel like it's always in the context of now and like safety and what to do when we recognize abuse, and obviously talking about right, minimizing and preventing that risk. But what about once abuse has occurred, and let's say that right, perpetrator was dealt with and the child is no longer at risk? What happens if it's not really properly addressed later on, right? Like
Yeah,
as an adult, what do we see in these kids?
great. It's a great question. So sexual abuse is a childhood trauma. It's what we call an ACE, an adverse childhood experience. And it has long-term implications, which is heartbreaking because heartbreaking and complicated because every child's experience is different. We all are born with different levels of resiliency. So different child is going to react in a different way. But children need to have support, and it's not just therapeutic support, but it's family support to help them through this process so that long term they don't end up high risk for social issues, financial issues, physical health issues, mental health issues. Children who experience childhood trauma are much more likely to get sick. It affects their immune systems. They will be in the doctor's office more often. They will have more difficulty building healthy relationships as they grow older. They will make poor choices because their self-esteem has been affected. Often if this type of abuse is not addressed or dealt with in a very healthy mental health way, they are at high risk for addiction. They are at high risk for either sexual promiscuity or total withdrawal. And we want kids to be raised and feel healthy and have the opportunity to have healthy, long-term, sexual, intimate relationships. So it affects them full circle. And I can speak to that, and I was abused as a child, and that actually that puts me and everybody else who gets abused as a child at risk for abuse in later life. So that after being abused in elementary school level, age-wise, I then was abused by a coworker. I was 17 and he was probably like 20 years older than me. I was abused by a coworker. So it's almost like, someone said, oh, but he was, it was a relationship. No, 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 no. I was 17. He was, 40 something. And he assaulted me on the last night of my job. So I was already making poor decisions because of the abuse that happened on earlier. I didn't know any of this, of course, at the time. I was just in a pattern. So what happens is, depending on what type of abuse, a child needs to go to get extra, special help, trauma-informed care, where they can work through these types of issues to break that cycle and start learning healthy modes of living again.
Wow. So since you mentioned that, your specific experience, it made me wonder what myths, right, or what are some fallacies that people have
A
about abuse,
lot.
right? Right. I'm sure a lot, the big one that comes to mind is like stranger danger, right? That's a big part of what we teach kids. And we should, right? We should teach that in an appropriate context, I think, right? An appropriate context of how to
Yes.
navigate, unsafe situations. But I think that's a big myth when it comes to abuse, right? Because the likelihood of a stranger doing that, I think, is much lower compared to somebody that's close to them.
100%. And we have to emphasize this piece. It is a myth that it is a stranger that abuses children. 90%, 92% of the time a child is harmed, it is by someone they know and often trust. It is familial first. So the highest group is family, and it could be extended family, but that's the largest group. And then it goes out from there. But it is people we know in our community. It is people we know at our schools. It is people we know at our places of worship. It is the babysitter. It is the neighbor. It is people we know and trust. And we have to break that myth in our own thinking, because if we don't change our way of thinking as adults, we will not see that our child is at risk. We will miss the signs of the grooming process because we would say, oh, no. That's Joe. He's just so much fun with the kids playing on the street every day. He's so awesome. And we will miss those red flags. It is so powerful, that whole stranger danger thing, because we have to change a societal mindset, because we were educated many years ago because, and mainly because of media, that it's kids that were getting swiped off the street and either never being found or being found, sadly, dead. But the reality is hundreds of thousands of children are sexually abused every year, and nobody knows about it. It's really a silent epidemic, because most often it's someone we trust, which makes it more difficult to report. If it's a parent and that child depends on that parent for a roof over their head and food on the table, and their mother is not listening, more often it's men than women, so I say it that way, but it absolutely could be a female that abuses children. But if that parent doesn't want to hear this, because then they have to deal with it in a way that they don't want to, that's a very hard threshold for a child to go over, a hurdle to go over to get the help that they need to stop the abuse. And that's why a lot of that abuse goes on for years and years and years.
So obviously some of those situations, there's sort of no way to prevent from a child being in. So what I mean by that is children always need to live in a home. And so if there's an abuser in the home, we couldn't have prevented that child from living in the home, right? Or if the abuser, for example, is at school, then we couldn't prevent, we're not saying don't send the child to school. But what about the next level of kids sort of being more independent and outside of parental supervision? So things like sleepaway camp, things like sleepover at a friend's house. Where do those fall on the risk spectrum, and what do you advise parents to navigate those situations?
So I'm a believer that we should not be helicopter parents, and we've debilitated generations of kids by becoming helicopter parents. But what we do need to do in our parenting is teach children skills, just like you teach them swimming so that they would enjoy the water and lower the risk of drowning. We need to teach personal safety skills. So what we do at KidSafe is that we have a program that is part of the school day in public schools. And that is it's a curriculum. Just like they learn math, they learn reading, they learn personal safety. It is mandated across the state of Florida, K to kindergarten through grade 12, to teach this type of education. And so that's one way your children can get the information they need so that they can make safer and smarter choices and be informed citizens without being fearful citizens. Because we teach from a place of empowerment and fun. We don't teach them by saying, don't talk to strangers. Okay, because that doesn't teach a skill. You know, we don't teach them that people are bad in the world. No. We teach them skills so that they have a safety voice, that they have a circle of safe adults, that they know the difference between a good secret and a bad secret. And so what we implore is that parents be part of that education. So we have newsletters that go home to the parents, but the key is reinforcing it and making it a part of your everyday parenting, so that when you send your child to a sleepover, if you choose to do that, then the child has options of what to do if for any reason at all they feel uncomfortable. So I'll give you an example. Your child goes to a play date, not even a sleepover yet, because you train them when they're younger, okay? They go to a play date, they're having a great time, but the grown-ups in the house are yelling at each other. They're having a fight. They're in the kitchen, they're having a fight. The kids are in the, playroom playing whatever. And the kid, your child, is uncomfortable because they're not used to that type of communication, and they're a little fearful and they're uncomfortable. They know that they have the right to make a phone call home and just say, hey, mom, what's for dinner? Or some kind of either code or, hey, I'm feeling tired. Can you come pick me up? And that's the type of thing I want parents to actually say. Where does that lead? That leads later on to when they're at a party and they're too drunk to drive home, that they know carte blanche. They can write a text saying, pick me up, please. And no questions asked, that grown-up's getting out of bed at 12 o'clock at night and going and getting that child, right? So we're laying the foundation for this type of level of communication with kids, but you've got to teach them the skills. So with my kids, I was not a fan of sleepovers for many reasons, one of which, lots of things can happen at sleepovers. And often the way parents do sleepovers, and this is something for you to think about, if they have a kid who's 9 and that child wants a sleepover, they bring over a couple of friends, 1 or 2 or 3. And then, oh yeah, there's also a 14-year-old and they're going to bring their friends too. And this way mom is free, like practically, like
everyone's occupied.
Everyone's occupied. Yeah. She'll just keep those snacks a rolling and right. Kids are having a great time. Well, I don't want my 9-year-old in a household with a bunch of 14-year-olds. But often we don't ask those questions. Who else will be in the house? Who will be minding the children? So these are questions as adults we need to be asking each other. So what I did with my children is we did half sleepovers. And literally that meant that my child would be dropped off at a certain time, whatever it was, 4 or 5 o'clock. And by 10, 11 o'clock, I'm picking up my child and I'm bringing them home. And it's not just about sexual abuse prevention. It's about the fact that when I pick my child up at 10 a.m., that whatever was planned in my day with my child, maybe they had t-ball, maybe they had, gymnastics, whatever it was for that next day, or a birthday party, they are shot.
Right.
They're not even happy. They're not fun to be with. So why would I set my child up for that? So half sleepovers, they don't, just because everybody's doing it doesn't mean you have to do it. But in the meantime, you're also you're lessening the risk of your child seeing something on the internet, because people are online while they're at play dates, which they shouldn't be, and that should be part of the discussion. Are we going to be online, blah, blah, blah. And you're just lessening something happening in the middle of the night. I mean, we absolutely have heard stories in our own home. I'm in South Florida right now, in our own hometowns, that a child goes on a sleepover and in the middle of the night, they are inappropriately touched by someone in the house. And that stuff is real and it happens all the time. And then the kids are terrified to tell, terrified. And that's why we've already had conversations, not one conversation, but conversations. If anything ever happens that makes you feel uncomfortable, it is not your fault. You can tell me anything. Because often, if they get tricked by that 14-year-old who says, hey, you guys, you 9-year-olds, let's play a game. I'll pay you $5. It'll be so much fun. The sister goes and your kid's sitting there going, that doesn't feel quite comfortable. I'm not sure what that, because they wouldn't know what it's about. They don't know what's on the other side. They do not need to know what's on the other side of that, let's play a game. They just have to listen to that, he wants to pay me for money, and then he's now asking me to keep it a secret. Now he's telling me I need to take off my shirt. How do I get out of this? And we empower kids with their safety voice to turn around and say to their friend, I don't want to do this, let's do something else, and walk away. But that takes training. That takes talking to our kids and empowering our kids that it's okay to say, no, I don't want to do this. I'm out of here. And then, of course, to tell someone they trust what happened. So I'm not a fan of sleepover. So I do the half sleepover until they were much older and we were having these conversations very openly. And then I also knew the people that they were sleeping over very, very well, and spoke to those people who they were sleeping over and said, I teach my kids about their personal safety. Here are the guidelines for me. And now you're opening up a conversation that person might never have thought of. So now you're educating the next person. So it's huge. It's exciting.
So a couple of call-outs that I think are really important. The first one is that component of peer pressure, I think, among parents, right? Everybody's doing it, right? If every quote unquote, right, everybody's having a sleepover, you don't want to be the mean parent that say my kid's not allowed to have sleepovers. And I think it's important to, one, realize it's probably not the case, probably not everybody. If you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable, probably a lot of parents are feeling a little bit uncomfortable, and you really need to be an advocate for your kids and set them up in a situation that is not going to be unsafe. So I love the half sleepover idea, right? Because then they get the fun of the sleepover and that you're not screwing up the whole, next day. And another thing that you said, I just want to reiterate the concept of like laying this down as a foundation. So this is not a conversation you have as you're driving the kid over, right, for the sleepover. I'm like, hey, by the way, if anybody touches you, you won't get in trouble. Just let me know. Okay, have fun, right? This is really something. It takes a lot of work and sort of like planting those seeds over and over and over. So it really becomes part of the family conversation, becomes part of something that the family's comfortable talking about. And you build upon it, right? As they get older, you maybe expand the conversation, or you expand sort of what it is that you're sharing, and what your thoughts are, and what it is that you're trying to prevent, right? Because the conversation you have with a teenager about this is very different than the conversation you have with like a 6-year-old about this.
Correct. But parents feel understandably like, I didn't get the memo. Where's my my book that I need to manual to to follow. So we don't want to leave them in the lurch. They can go to our website, to the parent education page, and see these little comments that we have about these types of conversations. And they can pick and choose and just start integrating this into their own being, into their own language, talking about it with their partners, talking about it with the family. We have we have wonderful books for children, as well as a book for grown-ups that has all this information laid out, so that it opens those conversations. You have a resource to use, and you're not alone. And that's a key. I really don't want parents to feel like, well, where do I start? You start by just going onto the Kids Safe Foundation website and start there. And there's a plethora of information online as well.
That sounds like a fantastic resource. Really, really amazing. I want to kind of wrap it up. I'm sure we can keep going, and because that's such an important topic. It's not just like a 1-hour talk. I think it really should be ongoing. But any major takeaways? Like what are if we didn't touch on anything that you really want parents or educators or even pediatricians to really take away from this?
Yeah. So I think that people feel that if they talk about this topic with children, that the children are going to lose their innocence. And that is not true. And in today's world, because of the internet, because of just the way kids are growing up today, they are seeing and experiencing things at a much earlier age than we ever did as kids. So I speak for myself, not for you, because I'm much older than you. But the idea is that you need to think about how you talk to children about this topic. You cannot come from a place of fear. You can't bring in your old stories of, oh my God, this is what happened to me. The white van pulled up and we were so scared and blah, blah, blah. Because that, number one, that doesn't teach a skill. And number two, that makes kids more fearful. We already have enough anxiety in our world as it is for our children. But what we do want to do is utilize examples in their everyday world about this topic. They read books, they watch movies. You really can't get through a day without this topic coming up in the news. And if you have the TV on in your home all the time, I'm going to ask you to not do that in the best interest of the mental health of your children, because it raises your own anxiety, which absolutely raises their anxiety, and they are listening. Even if you think that your 3-year-old is sitting on the floor just playing with their toys, they're taking in these conversations, and it's not healthy for them. So think about how these things impact your children and teach from a place of empowerment. They will not lose their innocence. You are building, imagine that you're building a toolkit inside their brain, you know, a Dropbox, a OneDrive. I used to say a file cabinet. It's not a file cabinet anymore. You know, they have a Dropbox, and they need these resources to be able to pull out when they get into all the various challenges they will face in life.
Cherie, tell me one more time, the if parents want to visit the website, what is it?
It is www.kidsafefoundation.org.
Okay, fantastic. It sounds like a really great resource. Thank you so much for this important work. Thank you for everything that you're doing and for coming back on here with me to finish the conversation.
I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. It was great.
Make sure you like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Thank you for joining us on Kids Talk.